If you were 2-7, you'd be in a bad mood too.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. And he hits the upright again. That's impossible.
Get your mouth shut. Get your mouth shut. Jerk.
The Bears' season's going to end on a double doink.
If worms had machine guns, then birds wouldn't be scared of them.
Hey, everybody! Welcome to the Limp Ditka's podcast. I'm Pete.
I'm Ryan. Welcome to the Limp Ditka's podcast, episode 3. We're trying some new technology here today, so we'll see if this all works or if time and this podcast will be completely lost. I guess we'll find out. Big show this week. Of course, we have Michigan State news, the biggest upset in quite some time against our rival, the University of Michigan. We've got Notre Dame news, big matchup this weekend, and I'm sure you are going to be breaking down for us, PV.
Rig it down.
We've got, of course, our Dallas Cowboys and, unfortunately, Detroit Lions news.
I don't know. I think it's unfortunate for both. Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not working out so well, but
that's probably gonna be the most fun of the segments.
yeah. Well, another piece of fun we're gonna have is the debut of the LDP top 6 college football poll. You and I are going to break down who we think are the top 6 teams, and I'll explain why it's 6 as we get into that. Maybe we'll do that after we talk about Michigan State and Notre Dame.
The number of the beast.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, let's jump into
let's jump into news that I'm happy you're going to be able to share right now, and that neither one of us really saw coming after that week 1 performance. But
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Smitty.
Yeah,
you deserve to announce this.
The Limp Ditka's podcast is formed based on our mutual hatred of the Chicago Bears and, of course, University of Michigan football. And Michigan State, after losing inexplicably to one of the worst teams in college football history, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, 2 weekends ago, they came into the big house with zero expectations from anyone to win that game. And they not only won the game, they only won by 3 points, but they really kicked the shit out of Michigan. It was a dominant game. It was a 10-point game with 5 minutes to go. It was not a fluke that they won that game. Basically both sides of the offensive and defensive line, I mean, State just dominated. State could throw the ball, just have everybody run deep, and Michigan had no response to that, to the tune of Rocky Lombardi throwing for 323 yards. A true freshman, Ricky White.
Oh my God! Just wiped the floor with Michigan.
Yeah, he would just run deep. Yeah, I think he had 7 catches for 196 yards.
Insane.
Literally, the Jim Harbaugh, Harfraud, as he will forever be called, was completely outcoached by well, we have to call him Mel Tucker, the bad motherfucker, once again. I took that nickname away from him after the Scarlet Knights debacle, but he's got that back. He's got his wallet back, the bad motherfucker wallet, because he completely outcoached Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh, I forget their defensive coordinator. I should remember this. They made no adjustments. They had no idea how to stop them from throwing over the top, and it was just stupid. Part of that is just because of the dominance of the offensive and defensive line. So
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say that Michigan State totally outscouted.
Yeah,
Michigan, and Mel Tucker's staff saw the weakness in the Michigan secondary and said, that is where, if we're going to win this game, that is where we're going to exploit them. And if you run a week of practices with, I may be maybe overspeaking here. I believe they're allowed no contact practice, right? If you're running a week of practices where you're throwing a deep ball up, like you're going to get it right in the game if you're running the same plays like over and over again. And the fact that, like you said, like when they wanted to throw the ball 40 yards, they just threw the ball 40 yards for a completion. It was I was like, I'm pretty sure I laughed out loud at least 6 times, if not more, in that game. Like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Well, from going from the worst debut of any coach in state history that I can imagine to going to one of the greatest upsets in Michigan State history the very next week, it's just an insane dichotomy. I've heard people compare that upset of Michigan to their loss to Appalachian State, which I think that might be overstating it a bit.
Yeah, that's overstating it, unless you're just saying based on how they looked in that first week. But Michigan State is obviously a much better football program historically than Appalachian State, so why that's an overstatement.
Well, some of that came from like the point spread. It was at one point it was 24 and a half, 24 in the hook. Yeah. And I think it got bet down to like 21.5 maybe.
No, I think it was 29 and a half and got down to 24.
I never saw 29. I saw 24, but it's possible. Yeah. So maybe that was what the spread was against Appalachian State. But yeah, I mean the reputations of the programs are completely different. I mean, Appalachian State was a Division II team or whatever at that point. So, but yeah, I mean it just puts it in some perspective what an epic upset that was, and how there's just zero expectation that State could do anything. And it does 2 things. I mean, it certainly sets the Mel Tucker regime up for, they don't really have to prove anything for the rest of the season, because no one was expecting much to begin with. Certainly wanted more than a loss to Rutgers, but now that he's beaten Michigan already, nobody cares what they do the rest of the season. I mean, there's some hope going into Iowa this week that they can ride that wave. I don't know what to believe basically at this point, but yes, we'll see on Saturday. But the other thing it does is just once again exposes Jim Harbaugh as the complete fraud that he is, that he's run this program for 6 years now and has no idea how to beat a completely under Michigan State team. It's just, they should be embarrassed.
Yeah, I've always felt he was overrated as a coach, and I think part of that reason is it seems like after the newness wears off, teams really his staff and himself, they run tendencies that allow the other teams to pick up and exploit him. And usually after his first few years in any program, his returns start to diminish. So, and that's what we're seeing here. And I wonder how long, Michigan sticks with them, because only playing a Big Ten schedule, they should almost have gone undefeated really this year.
Yeah.
Or at least they had a legitimate chance to. And in the second week of the season, they're done.
Yeah. Yeah. To your point about how they just study tendencies and maybe don't get into the nitty gritty of stuff, quarterback Joe Milton, after the game, was asked about Antoine Simmons' performance against him. He didn't know who he was. And he acted like he shouldn't know. And Antoine Simmons had the game of his life and, tipped away a sure touchdown pass, completely fucked up Michigan's offense. And Joe Milton acted like he had no idea who it was. So that's part arrogance and ridiculous arrogance, because you just got your ass kicked and you're still being
and terrible coaching.
Things. Yeah, and coaching. Yeah, I think he might not have ever heard his name before, because there's that level of incompetent coaching and arrogance. So
I think
Michigan.
Arrogance is right there. Like, not to have scouted the team well enough to say, okay, you're not going to want to throw the ball to this side as often because this is their best secondary player out there. We're going to have to work on these guys, but whatever. Fuck Harbaugh. Fuck Michigan.
Yeah.
This is a great fucking win. Not only for Michigan State, but for this podcast.
Yes, absolutely. It couldn't have timed out better. It's only our third podcast, and we have a massiff embarrassment
Yeah.
of the Michigan Wolverines. We've had plenty of embarrassments
Right.
of embarrassments for the Chicago
Yeah.
Bears already, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Oh yeah, we will.
I
But
think we should
speaking
stick with
of-
college,
yeah.
but I think we should move to your Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
I was gonna say, speaking of big wins, there could be no bigger win for the Irish than this coming Saturday when they take on, according to, we haven't announced our rankings yet, but I would say according to other rankings, the number one team in the country, Clemson, who is without their star quarterback due to COVID protocols. They didn't even. You know what? I have a lot of respect for Clemson that they didn't even toy with it. They didn't even, try to pretend that he might play.
It's
They
actually a
just
little
said,
surprising that they didn't play
Yeah.
around with that. They just they ruled him out.
Dabo just came out and said, I'm gonna just. I think part of it was he didn't want to deal with questions all week and was just like, due to COVID protocols, he's not going to be able to play, which is what we speculated on the last episode. So this goes back to something I said last episode, and I still sort of feel this, even though Clemson still looked like a very decent football team. Without their star quarterback.
They were down 17 points at Boston College at one point.
Yeah, but they came back. And Boston College's program isn't terrible. It's kind of like that Pittsburgh type of program. They have a winning record and whatnot. But they probably would not have been down 17. But they came back. They won the game. They had a very good running game against Boston College. And that's, Notre Dame cannot solely focus on the running game to where they're getting exploited in the passing game, but that is probably going to be where they focus on stopping the run to put them in longer third down play situations, and that is how they're going to succeed and beat them. And talking about Notre Dame, if this offense continues to perform like they've been performing, which is just like racking up points and running it up against the competition, then they should win this game. It's not going to be a blowout, but they'd obviously easily win this game by 10 to 14 points.
Really? Over number one Clemson? Wow.
Yeah.
That is a bold statement right there.
I don't think Clemson's the best team in the country right now.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But they're among.
Especially after what we saw in that Boston College game, and Notre Dame's offense is better than Boston College's offense. So obviously you can put points up on the board against the Clemson defense. So that's where my fears get subsided, and then Clemson turns into, they're not a one-dimensional football team, but they become a little bit more of a one-dimensional football team with relying on the run more than they normally would have. So,
wow, I was not expecting such a bold proclamation from you. I'm kind of blown away. 2-score victory,
and it's in South Bend. So
yeah,
there's we do have a little bit of noise in these stadiums because they let people in. So
is that the late afternoon? Is that the late afternoon game?
It's a primetime game, 6:30,
nice.
I think. Yeah,
that's gonna be awesome. I can finally not watch CNN for a couple days.
Well,
watch some good shit.
Probably be done watching CNN later today, but that's not what we do here.
Let's transition into the aforementioned Limp Ditka's podcast top 6 college rankings. This is our new experiment. We just had an idea.
We're excited.
We're going to basically play act out what the college football playoff committee does each week. I believe that's starting shortly, where they rank the top 4. They rank everybody, but the key is their top 4 to make the college football playoff. Well, my thinking behind 6 is I've always wanted to have a 6-team playoff. And you might not agree with this, Pete, but for purposes of this podcast, I think it's fun to do it this way, but we can debate that later. But I always wanted 6. I wanted a playoff my entire life, and we finally got that in, I believe, 2016. It's 4-team playoff, which is fine. I'm happy there's a playoff at all. 6 always appealed to me with the idea that there was an extra incentive for teams to go for that number 1 or number 2 slot. They would get a bye week, and three would play 6, 4 would play 5 in the first round. So there'd be reason for teams to not just squeak in. They would try to be, not that they would not try, but it just rewards the excellence of the top 2 teams more than the number 6 team. We've seen where in the current playoff system, 4 teams, the number 4 team has been a 1-loss team. You've got undefeated teams. It just seems kind of cheap that they're entered into the same tournament, with no detriment, no handicap. They're put in. It just seems a little unfair to me. That's why I think putting the 3 through 6 into their own, Final Four just to get into the real Final Four, I think would be cool. So, plus I want to do something a little bit different than a top 4, or top 10, or top 5, or whatever. So let's go over. I think the way the playoff committee is, they've got like 12 or 13 people that just go in and just say, hey, these are how I think they should be ranked, and let's come up to a consensus and release that to the public. So you and I are gonna do that exercise. I think we agree it's not too difficult to come up with the top 3, maybe a little bit different orders, but we can go back and forth, and you and I will decide what the official LDP top 6 will be. Start out with number 1. I'm going to give that to Alabama off the bat. I think they're number 2 in a lot of polls. Maybe they've moved up to number 1. I'm just looking at who they've beaten this year. They already have wins over number 5. Was it Georgia or Auburn? I can never remember. All those teams are the fucking same to me. Number 5, Georgia, and number 7, Texas A&M. Like, nobody's got a resume like that. We can debate whether even the ranking, the preseason into the early season rankings are even meaningful in any way, but that it gives you some barometer of who the different teams have played, and there's no one with a resume quite like that. Clemson is number 1 in some polls.
I think they're number 1 across the board. Right?
Yeah, but that's based on last year. Their best win this season is against Miami, who was number 11 at the time. So that's why I'm moving them to number 2. Do you want to talk about your number 1 and number 2?
Yeah, my number 1 is also Alabama, so we have consensus.
Cool. Perfect.
Same reasoning as you, which is kind of, that was like, I was looking at, who these teams have played so far. Even if you do have 1 loss, who have you played? What's your schedule look like versus undefeated teams who may have had softer schedules? And then for those undefeated teams, if you have had a softer schedule, how were your wins? Because unlike professional sports, style points count in college football. Yeah. They affect the rankings because there's not a way to really even out schedules, right? Because of conferences, and there's so many conferences. You don't, like Notre Dame gets cheated out of because of the Big Ten's late start. They get cheated out of playing some ranked teams this year.
Yeah,
because they weren't able to play what doesn't look like a great ranked Michigan team, but that wasn't on the schedule. Michigan State, I don't know. I can't remember who was originally on the schedule, but there's definitely some ranked teams they would have played that are no longer, on their schedule because, fortunately they're playing within the confines of the ACC. So that makes their schedule, that's made their schedule a little more legitimate than it has been in years past as an independent.
Yeah.
Like, the big thing on Notre Dame year after year for a long time was, well, you got your Navies and you got your Armies and you got that shit on the schedule, and they're not the toughest opponents. But anyway, so Alabama by far strength of schedule. They probably, I have it, whenever the first playoff rankings come out, I'm guessing they will be number one just based on
Yeah.
who they've played already. I also have moved Clemson to number 2.
Oh, okay.
In this ranking system. Again, I think Clemson's toughest opponent is coming up, really coming up this Saturday, and also will be Notre Dame's toughest opponent.
Yeah, at least
thus
we've got
far
this
year.
this game to settle this part of the argument at least. So that'll
this
be
part.
awesome.
Yeah, next week could have next week's standings will probably look a lot different than this week's standings.
Because I literally have Notre Dame number 3 in the country, and I'm guessing you do too.
I do not.
Wow. Okay, this is already interesting.
I have Georgia at number 3.
Georgia, really?
Because Georgia, even with the lost to the what is considered number 1, or in our case number 2 team in the country, and they've won the rest of those games against a very winning schedule, teams with winning records. So I feel even with that loss right now, they deserve the number 3 spot. That again, this isn't necessary. This isn't science. But
no, of course not. That's why it's endlessly fascinating. That's why people love college football, because none of it. There's no way to prove any of this. So
there's some style points there for Georgia, just because outside of one nail biter, which you could say the same thing happened to Notre Dame in a 12-7 win against a pretty crappy team. Georgia has dominated outside of the loss. So, I've got Georgia number 3 just because of that.
Well, number 4 through 6 are going to be crazy because I think you and I had totally different philosophies. But I'm certainly willing to change those. I'm not dying on a hill for any of these teams that I'm going to mention next, so we can adjust that in our final rankings. But I've got. At number 4, see, basically, I went with records, and I've always felt like the college football season is part of the playoffs. As soon as you lose,
pretty much. Yeah.
As soon as you lose, you are out in my mind. So that's why I didn't consider Georgia, but I can change that. I'm not 100% married to that idea, but mainly because I'm not real tied to any of these last 3 teams. I rank Ohio State number 4, even though they're 2-0, only 2-0 because they're Big Ten's late start. Their biggest win came last weekend against Penn State, who's not ranked. They've lost both their games already, so it's hard to say what that win really means. So, but I'm including them based on reputation, which is I'm being a little bit hypocritical of that too. Because their resume doesn't stack up towards anyone else. So I could see putting Georgia ahead of Ohio State, at least in our final rankings. Who do you have at number 4?
I have Notre Dame at 4.
Okay.
Their wins, have been impressive, except for the one rainy game where they won 12-7. So, again, they may not even be in the top. If they lose this week, I'm not gonna. Spoiler alert: they won't be in the top 6. So,
well, it depends on how if they lose in the last second field goal, that could change everything.
Yeah, maybe
style points, man, like we just talked about.
Yeah, or if it's controversial, or something. But yeah, so yeah, they're number 4 for me. I'm going to tell you right now. It's going to take a lot of convincing, and I sort of alluded this to you. It's going to take a lot of convincing for me to put any Big Ten team in the top 6 at all this year.
The whole year.
The whole year, because they're playing a shorter amount of games, and I'm going to go back to what we learned from the baseball season. I'm mixing sports here, but we learned that the central teams perform well because there are central teams that are the cream of the crop in the central, but they don't necessarily stack up that well outside of the central.
Yeah.
And again, I totally agree with you with Ohio State on reputation. And maybe it's because I fucking hate Ohio State. I hate Ohio State maybe more than any of these other teams on this list.
Yeah. Likewise.
I mean, Alabama is Alabama, but you got to respect the program and
Right.
and what they've done with it. Until I see some sort of cheating scandal out of Alabama or Clemson, like Ohio State has had, like I'm gonna reserve the right to just respect what they've done as a program. But 2 games into it, it's just hard. I know I may change my mind down the road.
Well, that's the
I
thing.
definitely cannot. Definitely at this point in time, I will not put any. For me, I will not put any Big Ten team in the top 6.
Well, 2 weeks in, I could see your argument there, but I mean, I can't agree with they're basically you're ruling the Big Ten ineligible for the college football playoff this year if you're never going to put them in the top 6.
No, I know. I that's a fair statement. Totally. So that's what I'm saying. Like right now, probably if they run the table on the Big Ten, then definitely probably worth considering in the what is now the top 4. So
yeah, to your point, once they build up that resume, you've got more to look at and more to argue on behalf of them. So I think that'll start to feel. It feels weird. I felt weird putting a 2-0 team in the top 4 when there's 6-0, 7-0 teams. It seems like they're in a different class right now, but that'll even out a little bit more. So
yeah,
I like that you're not gonna say no Big Ten team can ever make the playoff this year. That makes more sense to me.
It's more of like right now, like I've got to, because winning 6 games, being 7-0, being 6-0. I mean, it's still hard, even if you're playing cruddy teams. Like the law of averages start to stack up against you of being undefeated. It's just math.
That's literally how I came up with my number 5 team, 5 and 6 team. My number 5 team is BYU, which is they are 7-0, and just like you said, it's not easy to do, no matter what the competition is. But obviously, their schedule is nowhere near the other teams that we've mentioned. Their biggest win is against Houston, I believe. So 7-0. I mean, I put them in for this first ranking. I also put in Cincinnati, who's 6-0 with a similar week schedule.
But they've played some teams with winning records though. Cincinnati.
Yeah, their best win is against number 18 SMU. So
right.
I could have put them at number 5 instead of number 6. But
well, we have consensus again because I have Cincinnati at 6.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, there we go. So who did you have at 5 though?
I have Texas A&M at 5 because again they've played a bit of a tougher schedule in their one loss. Is there one loss to Clemson or Alabama or something?
It's Alabama.
Yeah, so
that's a quality loss.
That's a quality loss. But the interesting thing about both of Georgia's and Texas's A&M losses to Alabama, I think they were still by like 20 points. Yeah. So that's something worth considering. So I get the BYU though, because it is what we discussed. Like winning 7 straight games is not an easy task, no matter who it is, unless you're you're playing a high school football team, which is not the case here. So, I'm actually okay. Like if we come to a consensus on moving Texas and A&M out and putting BYU there.
Okay.
But I would respectfully ask that for the time being, we leave Ohio State out of the top 6.
Boy. Okay. So in that case, our final LDP top 6 rankings would be number 1, Alabama, number 2, Clemson, number 3, Notre Dame, number 4,
Georgia.
I can live with that. Number 5,
BYU.
I think we should move Cincinnati up to 5 because we agreed on that.
Cincinnati 5.
And then number 6 would be between BYU and Ohio State, and we'll give the nod to BYU for
just because of more games. Now, if BYU loses next week, and Ohio State goes to 3-0,
that could switch.
I'm
yeah.
going to maybe consider your request.
Thank you.
I know. I'm so accommodating.
Well, this is how committees have to work. I mean, this is why it's
Yeah.
kind of fun. You wonder what these real conversations are like with much higher stakes than
Well,
than our stupid
and,
opinions. But
and these guys all have something we don't. We have not been able to scout their talent, which is partially what these are based on too. These are guys who go out, watch the practices, look at what
the college football committee.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought they have or at least look at
I don't know,
like how many blue chip players they have in consideration and all that. That's how some of that gets done.
I think it's up to whoever's on the committee. They can do it any way they want. I think there might be a few members. We actually, maybe that's something we should do next week. Who's on the committee this year?
Yeah.
Kind of take, but
by the time the playoff committee kicks in, they have 8 weeks of football to look at though too. So.
Usually, yeah.
I'm talking about. I'm sorry, I should take a step back. It's not the playoff committee. I'm talking more about like how these coaches and the AP and how they rank the teams.
Oh yeah,
sorry. I was. They're doing that based on like Notre Dame's draft class was this, and Alabama and Clemson, and these are the guys who are coming back from the team that won the championship last year. So all that's taken into consideration, good or bad. I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? And we've seen drastic swings in a when you're running a full college football schedule. I didn't Notre Dame a few years ago lose to Michigan in like the second game of the season, and they were the third or fourth ranked team, and they were 12th. Then they fought their way back into it. But then you got this whole thing that then like after you lose to Michigan, you have to do the dirtiest thing because of the way college football works. You have to root for Michigan to win out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's like
more quality loss.
Yes, that's the worst feeling in the world. That's why I love and hate college football all in the same breath. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
glad
all
it's
right.
back.
So here we go. That's it. We got the first rankings have come to a consensus live. We did it live on the air too.
You saw it here, folks.
You saw it here, or you're listening to it now on the podcast. So
the fun thing is that's going to change every week. I mean, like we talked about number 2 is playing number 3 this week, so that something has to give right there. And I mean, the bottom of the poll is definitely going to change all season long. I think there's not going to be that many undefeated teams to pick from. So. I like it. That was fun.
Speaking of someone has to win, maybe I should transition into the NFC least.
Yeah, let's jump into pro football.
Because they seem to be playing each other right now, so there always are wins racking up finally in the NFC least because they play each other. But not this week. No. Not only does Notre Dame, not only do the Dallas Cowboys have to play this week and not. Would have been great timing for a bye, but they have to play the 7-0 Pittsburgh Steelers, which is yikes galore. This is one of the most. I've watched a decent amount of the Steelers already this year. They are probably one of the most balanced offenses in football. They can get you either way, and the Cowboys. I was already chalking this up to a lost season, and their defense played admirably against Philly, who's supposed to, be a decent offensive team. They created 4 turnovers last week. They held them in check, but my excitement over Ben DiNucci, the Nooch, did not last long. It probably ended. It lasted till about the third quarter when it looked like they were going to come out and he was going to be able to manage this game to a victory. But the Cowboys got in their own way by they were running the ball down Philly's throat and then decided they needed to pass, try to throw the deep ball. And you know what? Throw the deep ball, miss it, then get back to running the ball. Loosen the defense up. It's fine. Run sets where, some of the smartest football teams are teams that you can't tell what set they're in, whether they're running pass or run. And a lot of teams are doing that these days, and the Cowboys were doing it more when Dak was in there, but they had the Nooch, and the Nooch shit is
You love the Nooch.
I love the Nooch. Oddly enough, Nooch's numbers, I think Nooch's QB rating versus Wentz's QB rating was pretty much the same, which is hilarious, and how bad of a season Wentz has had. And again, we don't need to beat a dead horse and cut its head off, but the NFC East is the worst division in football. But now it gets even more interesting for the Cowboys, because I was anticipating the Red Rifle coming back. But to make matters worse, he's out of concussion protocol and then gets the COVID.
Oh boy!
So
that's a theme this week.
The Red Rifle is part of the COVID pandemic running through football right now, to where the 49ers limped on the field last night and got their ass kicked by the Packers.
Well, half the team was gone.
Yeah, I don't think they had any starting defensive linemen or something like that. Apparently, that's under investigation. But anyway, I digress. So now the Cowboys turn to Gilbert and Cooper Rush as their possible starting QBs from this week, which we won't know until tomorrow.
Well, I'm rooting for one in particular, Cooper Rush, because
of the great name.
No, he is a Chippewa, Central Michigan.
Oh yes, he is Central Michigan.
My alma mater. So the long line of great Central Michigan quarterback, starting with Gary Huggaboom. I believe he was a Cowboy back in the 70s or 80s. Can't even think of the last any quarterbacks in between. Maybe Ryan Lefevre was with the Bears for like a week. But Cooper Rush
the Bears might be trying out Lefevre this week, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah. So Cooper Rush is definitely my choice. He was okay during his years at Central. I can't believe he made pro football. I don't know if he was drafted or how you guys even pick him up.
Well, no, he's been with the Cowboys already.
Okay.
His last.
No, I know. How did you get him? Did you draft him?
Yeah, I believe so. His last on the field performance with the Cowboys was 2018.
Wow.
In a preseason football game, not even a regular season football game, which I admit, he's looked more serviceable than Nooch, but that's not saying much. And then our other choice also has last been seen on a pro football field, but this is in a regular season game in 2018, is Gilbert, who was 2 for 6 for 40 yards. So it's really shaping up to be.
I don't even know who this is. Gilbert Grape? Who is this?
Yeah, Gilbert. That's his last name, Gilbert. He was with Carolina. I can't remember his first name.
That's perfect.
I know,
it's
right?
Better
exactly.
that way.
I didn't even he was playing in another football conference last year, the American Football Conference or something like that, something weird like that. It wasn't, so I was like a semi-pro thing, I think, or something. But anyway, these are what we're limping in. The only positive news, again, coming out of the Cowboys is, I think there's a few things actually. One is I'm happy that Jerry Jones and the organization didn't do anything stupid in trades, in the fact of like bothering to go get a Ryan Fitzpatrick, which was rumored out there, or a Matthew Stafford.
I definitely want to talk about this.
Because you've got Dak Prescott coming back next year. You've got young talent on the field. You'll have hopefully you'll have a healthy offensive line next year. So it's not the end of the world, even though what the hopes were going into the season to turn this into a lost season, which I kind of felt that was how it was going to be. Maybe they could squeak out the NFC East with Dalton at the helm, but I was still after watching his partial game performance, I was questioning how serviceable he was at this point too. So now we go in with this Gilbert and Rush, one of them being the starter this week. So, is what it is. I'll still watch the games because I'm a fan. I've suffered through many of terrible seasons with the Cowboys. So other bright spot is we do, at least the offensive line can run. And the reason they were running last week was Zach Martin was back, and they literally were running consistently. And the Philadelphia Eagles knew it, but they put Zeke right behind and Pollard. They were running them, just running over the Philadelphia defense with Zach Martin blocking. And they knew they were running to that side, and they still couldn't stop it. So that's a testament of what a great athlete he is and a great offensive lineman he is. And the final note was, addition by subtraction on the defense. And it was the Philadelphia Eagles, so we'll get a real test on how good they are against the Steelers this week. But they made huge leaps last week in that Eagles game with the amount of turnovers created. And we're talking single coverage interceptions and things like that. So, and pressuring the quarterback with splitting Alton Smith and the return of Randy Gregory to the field, who's had nothing but off the field issues since joining the Cowboys. But that formula seems to be working, and they're getting the pressure they thought they were going to be getting with Mike Nolan's defense. So there's some things that, as you look towards the future, are looking positive. You said you had a thought?
I feel like that was about 15 minutes ago. I think you did mention Matt Stafford, and that would be a good transition into some Lions talk. You also mentioned how you're suffering through you've suffered through many bad Cowboy seasons. Well, you can't talk to a Detroit Lions fan about suffering. I don't feel bad for you guys at all. Sorry, but
I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just saying I'm not. After you're a fan that went through the glory of the 90s, it was a little hard to swallow what happened after that. Now it's not, is what I'm saying. Well,
I've seen one playoff.
But again, you've probably seen, based on what I know, you've seen a lot worse. So
I did like that you brought up Matt Stafford in the context of not doing anything stupid, because I was hoping that you guys would trade for Matthew Stafford. I think I talked about that in episode 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And that would have been incredibly stupid for many reasons, but the newest reason is that he himself has he has not tested positive for COVID. We're not exactly sure. He is in the COVID protocol right now. It appears his family member, a family member or multiple family members, were exposed to someone who was COVID positive. So he has to self-quarantine for whatever it is, 2 weeks, but he is unavailable to the Lions. I feel that's actually a blessing in disguise, because now we're back to where this team was last year, 3-13 campaign, where they lost their last 10 games, I think, as soon as Stafford went out with a back injury. So we're back to that. There was a little optimism last week in our episode 2. Not from me necessarily, but there was some expressed optimism because the Lions were on a 2-game winning streak, but having beaten Jacksonville and whoever the fuck else they beat. But last weekend they were exposed for exactly what we thought they were. Lost to a decent Indianapolis Colts team that just kicked the shit out of them. I think the final was like 41-21. It was just that. Yeah. That's the team. That was not. The previous 2 wins were against just complete garbage teams. That's what the Lions do. They kind of get your hopes up with bullshit wins, and then anytime they play someone of significance, they run down their leg. So yeah, that was. I mean, I don't want anyone to have COVID or be exposed to it or whatever, but I mean, it works out for the Lions where they have no chance this week. I don't see how I'd much rather see them lose. Kind of your thought process for the Cowboys. It's a lost season again for the Lions. Might as well lose and get a better draft pick, like I've been talking about all year. That's kind of been my mentality for most of my Lions fan life. it's just the same shit over and over again. And the more they lose this year, at least, the other thing I can pull out of it is the more likely it is that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn will be fired. And that is the only way to potentially turn things around, even though that outlook is bleak too, because the Lions have rebuilt so many different times in so many different ways, and it has led to the exact same place, the place we're at today, Shitsville. So that's all I've got about the Lions.
Speaking of teams exposed and what we thought they were,
Yeah,
Chicago Bears.
I think
The downward spiral, which is a great Nine Inch Nails album, and congratulations on their Hall of Fame induction.
wow.
But this team is the team who we thought they were.
They are frauds.
They are frauds. They statistically they look like frauds, but now it's starting to catch up with them, and I think it's only going to continue.
Yeah, it was perfect. Like we spent a lot of time on this last week, talking about how they were frauds, and they were definitely exposed as that on Monday Night Football. That was fun. Fun to watch. The best part for me was their unraveling in front of a national audience. Included Javon Wims.
Oh my God! Yeah, what a
completely losing his mind.
Yeah.
It's funny enough, like to get into a fight, not even trying to hide it from the refs, just starting to go after the defensive back who we had issues with throughout the game that we can get into. But my favorite thing is when football players try to punch each other in the helmet. Like all you're going to do is break your own hand. That was literally the reaction from the Saints DB. I forgot his name, but he got hit in the face and he just sort of looked at him like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why?
Yeah, right.
Why would you bother trying to punch me? I have a helmet on, so he didn't even react at first, and that pissed off Wims even more, and he went after him. So he's ejected from the game. He subsequently got a 2-game suspension on top of that, which is definitely warranted. There was a lot of weird shit. Like the DB was definitely doing some weird stuff too. I think he pulled his mouthpiece out on a drive earlier or a play earlier, so that's what he was pissed about. So it wasn't just that he went nuts for no reason, but you can't lose your cool. I mean, it's so
you can't
stupid.
get baited. He got baited into
He did.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
New Orleans is like, hey, maybe we can bait one of these guys. This is stuff that they think about. We can bait these guys into a reaction that causes them to not be on the field, which makes our mission easier to accomplish.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly for that strategy.
It did. I think the best part of the entire game, though, is the fact that somehow in the one play he was involved in, Mitch injures his throwing shoulder, which has now caused a 3-yard rush, not even a good play. He's now caused the Bears to have to try out quarterbacks as a backup because he's not available.
Wow. Yeah, it's
that would probably fall under a shit you couldn't make up type of scenario there. Like, you come in for some stupid play, and you get hurt on it. So, and I heard a lot of talk prior to that with which I find comical about Bears fans, is that they wanted Mitch out because Foles has been sort of mediocre at best.
Yeah.
Now they've clamored, maybe it's time to put Mitch back in. Well, no, it's not, because now you're stuck with Foles for sure.
Anyone who wanted Mitch to be put back in just either just woke up from a coma after the last 4 years, or just doesn't know anything about football, because you watch that guy play, he can't play. He gives you a little bit more potential for running out of your quarterback, but that's it. I mean, you're not going to win with that guy. It's a joke. It's just funny to see them in this situation. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I know. I love it too. I think even though they had such a hot start, I think they're going to play under 500 the rest of the way and probably not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, so there you go. And just one other note, like go look at your defensive stats too, Bear fans. Your defense is not as impressive as you think it is.
Right.
They're right in the middle of the pack. So, I mean, this is not. You got to question like how long does Nagy have?
Yeah.
And are they going to move on to another GM because this asshole moved up in a draft where Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson were available and picked Trubisky.
Yeah, that will forever haunt Ryan Pace. I mean, he'll never outlive that.
If you're, I should just say how it's supposed to be pronounced, even though there's no N in it. Trubinsky.
We did this last week.
I know, but it just makes me laugh still. So. On that note, what you got? Anything else?
I don't have anything else. I think that's about it, unless you have something. But if not, I think we can successfully wrap up episode 3. Hopefully, this recorded, and we'll be able to produce this podcast for everybody. That podcast should be available pretty much everywhere you can find a podcast. We're also on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is running. We're on Facebook. Instagram and Twitter, all at Limp Ditkas, and you can always find us at limpditkas.com. We are part of the Wordhole Network, fake network that we made up with that. It's an umbrella thing that covers the Limp Ditkas podcast as well as our baseball podcast, Major League A-Holes. So you can always check that out at majorleagueaholes.com.
Yeah, we're currently negotiating with Comcast and Hulu TV, so we'll see if those negotiations go well. I know you guys are clamoring for us to be added, so
yeah, check us out anywhere. So with that, I think we will say we'll catch you guys next week.
Yeah, Peace. We're if anyone has any suggestions, we're trying to come up with a real dagger of a closing for football, something football related to close out this podcast, but we're at a loss right now. So
we'll call this Dagger Time.
Dagger Time.
Dagger Time. Peace.